Hello, and welcome to the Kitty Cat Lane. My name is Lane, and in today's video, I'm going to be showing you all how I like to draw clothing and giving my tips on how you can do it too. When we draw clothing on our characters, we have to be thinking about how the clothing is going to fit and how it will react to the body. The most common reaction that the clothing has is to conform to whatever movement the body makes and bunch up when it's loose. First, let's take a look at the types of bunches, folds, and wrinkles that we see the most and where they often occur. Stretched fabric creates tension folds when it's taut or tight on the body, or if it's being pulled by external forces like gravity or wind. Gathered or compressed folds are where loose or extra fabric clump together on top of itself. This is usually seen at the bottom hem of clothing and in bins of the body where fabric is pinched, and also in loose-fitting or baggy clothing. If you're ever trying to guess where to put a fold and you don't have a reference, a good rule of thumb that I go by is if there's a joint in the body, there's a fold in the fabric. Because whenever and wherever your body moves, your clothing does too. So for my first group of demonstrations, I drew a bunch of skirts. Even if you don't want to draw a lot of skirts, looking at these will give you a good example of the way clothing folds and wrinkles. I'm going to try to make all of my educational images like this one and the others that we will be looking over soon downloadable in the description. So if you like, you can study over them or follow along with me if that helps you. I'll also add the models I made to practice drawing the clothing and outfits on. You are more than welcome to draw or trace over them for educational purposes, and if you'd like to post them online, I would love to see them. Just tag or @ me at the Kitty Cat Lane on whatever social media app you prefer to use. The first thing I like to figure out with skirts or pants is the waistline. Then I do the sides and just get a loose outline or simplified version of the bottom hem. After you do that, it's much easier to get the inside parts and details figured out. So I made some easy step-by-step guidelines here for getting the base down, then adding details. Remember, the way that your clothing folds will change depending on the material that the clothing is made of. If it's a thin and light material, it'll have more small and tight wrinkles and bunches. If it's thick and heavy, it's going to have fewer and larger bunches with not as many tight wrinkles. If it's a stiffer clothing, it'll have more hard bends and crinkles. Here are some different types of shirts as well. Some are fitted and some are loose. The body type of the character that you're drawing will change the way that the clothing looks on them, so make sure you keep the style of the clothing or the way that each character would style their own clothing for their unique body in mind as you draw. And one of the most overlooked pieces of advice I can give you for drawing clothing is to add the seams. For pants especially, adding a seam along the inner or outer legs can really help define what direction your legs are going, even if the clothing is so loose and baggy that it covers up all the shapes and indentations of the legs. And whenever you draw a seam, make sure you follow the shape of the body and the folds and wrinkles that you made. You don't want the front of your button-up shirt to be drawn as a perfectly straight line from top to bottom. I use my coloring and highlighting with shading to do most of the work when it comes to my folds and wrinkles. I follow the line art as a guide, and then I go back and color the line art so it's not as bold. The wrinkles of the clothing help to make the art look more convincing, but it isn't the main focus. Sometimes less is more, so you'll have to try and find that balance for how you like to draw clothing in your art style. My art style is relatively cartoony, but uses realistic proportions, like a graphic novel or comic book style. That means when I draw clothing, I have to match those proportions and make it look somewhat realistic for it to be believable. It's just a cartoon drawing, so it doesn't always have to make perfect sense, but since I'm grounded by these realistic features, my clothing has to look somewhat realistic too. If I drew my characters semi-realistic, then phoned it in on the clothing with some really flat and cartoony stuff, it just wouldn't look right. The same thing happens if you draw very flat, stylized, cartoony characters with detailed and realistic clothing. It looks unnatural because it doesn't fit the style of the character. So unless that's an art style choice that you're intentionally going for, try to keep it balanced. As someone who went from hating to draw clothing to someone who now loves to draw clothing, you can do it. Just look at outfits and aesthetics that inspire you, and try to recreate something that you like in your style. The more you like what you're drawing, the more motivated you'll be to try it. And the more you know and understand the thing that you're drawing, the better and more convincing your art will be. Please let me know what you thought about this video and if it was helpful for you. If the downloadable guides are something you'd like to see more of in future videos, please let me know and I will do my best to start including more of them. If there's anything that you'd like me to go into more detail on, like a certain style or type of clothing, please let me know and maybe I'll do that for one of my next videos. Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you so much for taking a walk down the kitty cat lane with me. And here's the secret kitty of the day. Bye bye!